Warning, this video contains topics such as body horror and tumor growth. The information presented in this video is oversimplified. If you want to learn more about a specific topic, I recommend you do that. Now presenting. Someone with little knowledge in the field of biology tries to understand plasmium from a biological perspective. That is the wrong title. Plasmium, the planet's blue flowing blood. There it is. Now, what do we know for a fact about plasmium? You need a natural physiology and overexposure with lifeblood to synthesize it in your body. Examples like a xylitol who dives and becomes a source of plasmium. Hornet can synthesize plasmium in her shell after overdosing. And the knight, who does not have a natural physiology and is thus incapable of producing plasmium without the aid of the Joni's blessing charm. Joni, by the way, is also an unresponsive source of lifeblood, much like the dead xylitol. Lifeblood can take over, rejuvenate, replace anatomical functions. Once xylitol has become a source of plasmium and removes his heart, lifeblood continues to circulate throughout his body. Zango is reanimated by the plasmium in his body. It seems entirely unharmed, and his mind is gone, as seen with the lack of needle-in dialogue. The knight is unable to synthesize lifeblood until the Joni's blessing is equipped, as we saw on the last slide. This is likely because the lifeblood has regenerated the knight's lost internal biology. Now, I will try to back this up with future slides, but I do believe with the evidence we have in game that plasmium is a symbiotic, non-sapient, fluid-like collection of organisms with a defined life cycle. It starts with infection, seeding itself into the environment or a host bug, propagation with these little vine-like growths with butterfly ends. These butterflies appear to be membrane-bound sacs of lifeblood that can detach from the vine growths and propagate elsewhere. This image is not animated, but in the original Hollow Knight game, in Joni's Repose, you can see these butterflies flying away, most likely for further propagation. And then replication inside the bodies of an infected bug. These membrane-bound sacs of lifeblood seem to form and expand as the lifeblood replicates, until eventually it forms a cocoon, in which the main metamorphosis stage takes place. If you prematurely open the cocoon, you see life seeds in Hollow Knight, and in Silksong, you can see there is further evolution, with life seeds turning into winged life seeds. And now onto plasmium's symbiotic properties. There's facultative parasitism on display, when an organism can live without a host but can also become parasitic under the right conditions, i.e. when resources are needed and there is a viable host around. And plasmium also displays parasitoidism, when an organism like tachinid flies, interesting. When an organism lives and feeds in an organism until the end of larval development. You see this in flies, some species of wasp, maybe if we're lucky, some species of hornet, as well as facultative mutualism, when an organism can benefit from but live without the other organisms. You can live without lifeblood, lifeblood can live without you, lifeblood can propagate and replicate on its own without the need for a host, as we see in the original Hollow Knight game. But in the early stages of plasmium infection, the host receives increased healing and boosted metabolic processes, while the plasmium absorbs unused nutrients. Lifeblood's non-sapience. In both Hollow Knight and Silksong, life seeds cannot be observed engaging in acts of obvious intelligence. Lifeblood cannot be dream-nailed and runs away from potential threats like the skrill, another non-sapient species of insect. Lifeblood is attracted to the Joni's Blessing charm, but as we see in Silksong, Lifeblood is clearly able to detect traces of itself. We see this in xylitol, we see this in natural plasmium, etc. Winged life seeds and plasmified enemies do not respond to the needle-in Silksong. Gromlings have needle-in dialogue, but once plasmified, when turned into plasmids, by the way, gromlings when plasmified are called plasmids, that's important to know. They lose their needle-in dialogue. Zango does not have needle-in dialogue, despite being reanimated, and xylitol does not respond to the needle-in after he is plasmified. Alright, now that we're done reviewing what we do know, let us enter the speculation zone. I am hypothesizing that Plasmium is a highly evolved multicellular species of prokaryotic agrobacterium that invades the bodies of bugs as a stage in its life cycle. I just sort of threw a lot of big words at you at once. I'm going to try to break this down. Let me break this down for you. What is a prokaryote in the first place? To oversimplify, prokaryotes are much smaller and simpler than eukaryotes, which are, think of any animal, any plant. Plants, animals, insects, virtually anything that you can see without the aid of a microscope is a eukaryote. But things like germs, specifically bacteria, those are prokaryotes. They are much smaller, much more simple. They do not have membrane-bound organelles. They have they have circular DNA, my bad. And that is important to note because prokaryotes engage in horizontal gene transfer much more often than eukaryotes. HGT in prokaryotes typically involves a cell ejecting its circular DNA, known as a plasmid, and another integrating that genetic code into itself. For instance, multiple bacteriums in a culture can eject their plasmids at once and then rapidly suck in other plasmids from the environment in order to increase genetic diversity. That's why it is a bad idea to kill every germ on your hand with hand sanitizer, because if one germ survives and replicates with that resistance and is able to pass that resistance to other bacteriums via horizontal gene transfer, then a bunch of bacteria are now immune to that hand sanitizer, or at the very least resistant to it. And now, what is an agrobacterium, since I said that earlier? To oversimplify, agrobacterium is a prokaryote that uses HGT to induce tumor growth in plants, known as galls in plants. These galls have internal environments perfectly suitable for the agrobacterium and little else, and this allows the agrobacterium to proliferate. Here's an example of that. And why was that word vomit important? Because I am hypothesizing that Plasmium is a highly evolved version of this agrobacterium that I have dubbed Agrobacterium plasmia, which uses horizontal gene transfer to eject its genes just randomly. And it is very easy for those plasmids to enter the cells of eukaryotic beings like insects. And these insects do not have the co-repressors needed to repress these genes from expressing themselves. Co-repressors are genetic off switches. Higher beings and above do seem to be able to repress lifeblood synthesis, and specifically lifeblood's mind-invasive properties, as seen by Hornet in Yarnaby's house, who I forgot to include in the slideshow, but Yarnaby does have unique dialogue when you're overdosing on Plasmium, and Godseeker houses the abyss creature in her mind. It's not here, but that could be important. Agrobacterium IRL causes tumor-like growths in plants, and Agrobacterium plasmia causes tumor growth in groms, plasmifying them into the plasmidae. These are membrane-bound sacs of lifeblood, by the way. If this agrobacterium evolved to be a parasitoid, it would make sense for it to heal its host. After all, an alive host can find more nutrients for a long time. Being alive is better than being dead, in my professional opinion. And prokaryotes are far too simple to be sapient. There is not a single example on the planet Earth of intelligent prokaryotic life, so that would explain the lack of needle-in dialogue in every plasmified enemy. Once their minds have been invaded by the plasmium, which is non-sapient, those entities no longer display sapience. Thank you for coming to my Silk Talk. This took like 2 days to do. I like the process. This is much more difficult than I thought it was, especially this. I had to do a lot of research, i.e. random Googling and using Wikipedia as a source. I will be linking this slideshow in the description of the video. If you have any questions, comment. I'll see if I can answer. Try your best to poke holes in this, because I'm interested in this topic a lot, especially with the Lifeblood DLC that we're definitely getting, Sea of Sorrow. I'm so excited for it. Anyways, thank you for watching to the end. I'll probably be posting another YouTube video soon, so I'm so sorry